All right, hello everyone. Hello everyone, my name is Zane. I'm the club secretary for Plano West Rotary. I'm gonna let Steve kick off this meeting with brags. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, Zane. Hope everybody's doing good today. Let's see if we can get some brags going here. MacKenzie, would you like to brag?
I'm the guest from the State Department. I'm the speaker. So if someone else would go first so I can know what to brag about, that'd be great.
Okay. Catherine Goodwin, would you do a brag for us? And that way she'll know what's going on.
Sure, MacKenzie, our brags are about good things in our lives, both personal and business, professional. So I'm sorry that I am not in person today at our club. I started feeling bad last night and didn't want to share my germs. But I'm going to be positive about this and say that my brag is I'm glad that there are so many activities going on in my life that I had a lot of texts and emails to send out to make excuses for my absence today.
Yes, ma'am. Seems like it's that crazy time of year where bugs are prevalent of all types. Let's see here. I'll get back to you in just a second, MacKenzie. Nadia, would you like to brag?
Absolutely. I'd love to brag, even if I can't find anything, but I will find something. I actually want to brag for the club in general to be able to give us in-person and virtual possibilities. So really, thank you very much. A lot of clubs choose to have different variations, some in person, some online, but you actually have a hybrid option. So thank you very much. And Alex was working with me last week extensively, trying to help me with speaking engagement, with being engaged in the club. I emailed him afterwards, asking for certain links. So as we speak, I'm actually making a donation. So thank you for a great organization, getting us involved. And MacKenzie, I'm looking forward to your speaking. It's actually the primary purpose why I'm here.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Would somebody at Norma's Cafe like to brag?
Mike, right here. Pass it around.
Yeah, this is not really, one of them's a brag, one of them's not.
Where'd you get this?
I didn't mention last time that we met that Ryla is planning to meet this year. In the last 2 years, we never did get to meet because of the COVID and everything. So hopefully it'll come to fruition this year. So I'm excited about that. This will be year number 30 actually for camp. Benton Hall, as a matter of fact, was a counselor the first year. The other thing is this weekend coming up, I know Alex isn't here today, and I don't know if Zane may reinforce this, but I'm excited to see the names of people that are going to be at District Roundtable because we need to represent Plano West very well. So it's on the website, I think, or you can go to district5810.org. But we need to have a good showing over it because we're the host club this week. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you very much, Fred. Anybody else at Norma's want to brag? Go ahead.
Benton Hall. I've got some friendships with kids that play basketball at Plano, and they are undefeated, and they beat their big crosstown rival, Plano East, last Friday. Well, Plano East was 20-1. Plano was 20-0.
Really?
And so those are the two best teams in the district. So pretty fun.
That's pretty cool. Thank you, Benton.
Here, Benton. Benton.
Kent Stone, would you like to brag? Hey, Kent.
Yes.
Hey, Kent. Good to talk
Hi.
to you. You're live.
I am.
Ah, you're in a bed.
You're muted.
Kent, you're muted.
In a bed.
Good to see you.
You all as well.
Anything you want to say today, Kent?
Go polio, and I thank you all for all your thoughts and prayers.
Yes, sir. Hang in there.
I'm in the tough few days now where the chemo side effects are starting to take few more days of those before my blood starts growing again. Rotary.
Thoughts and prayers are with you, Kent. Okay, John Stafford, would you like to brag today?
I want to brag on everybody who came out to deliver furniture with Bed Start on Saturday. We managed to bring bedding to 3 families of Venezuelan refugees this weekend. And my wife was having a conversation with one of them. They had been living on inflatable mattresses for 3 months since arriving here, and they could not believe that people would actually donate furniture, much less deliver furniture to them. And they were extremely grateful for the help that we brought to their families. So I want to brag on everybody who came out on Saturday and did the hard work of making that happen.
Bed Start's a fantastic ministry. Thank you so much for your help. Let's see here. James Thomas.
Yeah.
You like to brag, my friend?
Just a simplistic brag. I am bragging about my twin brother, well, actually my older brother, Benton Hall, who is currently in the audience. Benton, I love you. I appreciate you. And I am so glad for Plano West Rotary Club for taking you in because you had nowhere else to go. Bragging for Benton.
Well, that's a nice brag. Thank you very much, James. Nadja, would you like to brag?
I just did. Shall I find something else?
Okay, Zena Wolfington, would you like to brag? You're muted, Zena. Okay, we'll get back to her. Tamara Thomas, would you like to brag?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I guess, first of all, let me say thank you for everyone that prayed for our family during our loss in the last month. It's been a very, very challenging month. And I did hear when I got on that Catherine and Kent Stone were needing prayer, so I will be praying for you. And I guess the brag that I can have is that I'm just glad to be out of 2020 and prayerfully looking forward to a better 2021.
I'm with you on that one. Amen. Okay, MacKenzie, are you ready to brag?
I'm ready to brag. I would say I just Happy New Year to you all. I'm excited to be here to be talking about human trafficking and for you all to be taking the time out of your day to listen to me and to hear about the issue as it impacts our community. So I'm just excited that you all want to learn, and I'm excited to be here to talk to you all about it. So
We're excited to have you. Thank you very much. Isabel Ann, would you like to brag?
No, really nothing to brag about right now. I do have a sick hubby that I'm trying to take care of. Hoping it's not COVID, but he's doing okay. So just trying to keep him well and all of us well right now.
I hear you. Michael Cook, would you like to brag?
I don't have any brags. My 5-year-old daughter scored 6 goals last week. I feel good about that.
Whoa.
Very good. Thanks for sharing. let's go back to Norma's. We got some more peeps back there that want to brag. I see multiple people there that could.
I'll at least put in a word that I didn't have any stake in the games necessarily that went on last night, but I was actually personally glad that someone besides Alabama won. So go Georgia with that. So.
I think you're probably not alone in them, in those comments, Glenn. I think that's a fair statement.
Hi, this is Michelle Thornton, and I'm going to brag that we have, hey, James, I'm going to brag that we have Marty James back for a repeat visit to our club, and she said she might even join. So I'm going to brag about that. And I'm going to brag about seeing Kent Stone. It's good to see you, man. And continue to let us know how we can help you besides prayers and any rides that you need. And then lastly, I'm going to brag that this month, Glenn and I are celebrating his birth month. So,
all month long.
Yeah. So it's none of this birthday stuff. It's birth month time. So we got a Frito pie
I'm pushing
today.
for a year, but I don't know if I can get that.
Frito pie.
Good to see everybody.
I see Joy back there and she just took a bite. You want to brag, Joy?
Now that I'm feeding my face and you called me out, I just want to brag on our club. I just think it's great that everybody's showing up even when they don't feel well, Catherine. And Tamara, despite your grief. And Kent, bless your heart. But aside from that, I'll just brag that I took 2 whole weeks off of work and I had a fabulous time. It was kind of hard coming back, but it was well worth it.
That's awesome to hear. Rebuild time is important. So you're actually able to get away and enjoy some time off.
I don't really have a brag, but we also had a death in our family. My uncle Lee, the last of that generation, passed away on New Year's Eve. He had been sick with pancreatic cancer. The end came really suddenly. He was only in real discomfort for like the last week of his life. I went up to Colorado Springs. My husband drove the harp up the next day and I played at his memorial service, which I was really glad to be able to do. And so it's not really a brag, but
thanks for sharing. I mean, that's what this opportunity this time's for us to brag or just share something that you would like to share. So that's great. Let's see here. Nathan Tay, would you like to brag?
Hi, everyone. I don't mean to brag today, but I'm just happy to be here today and to fellowship once more with everyone. That's all I'll say.
Thanks for wearing your Plano West Rotary shirt.
It's fine.
Let's see here. We've still got a couple minutes to brag. Is there anybody else I haven't called upon that would like to brag? I'm bound to have somebody.
I can go.
All right, Zane.
So some of you may have been hearing bits and pieces, but I'm starting this business with my dad, and we've been doing a lot of work together, and it's been pretty meaningful. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Yeah, we made a lot of progress over the last few months. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff coming. So excited about that.
So what are y'all going to be doing together, Zane?
Well, basically it's software to help that helps lawyers settle high conflict divorces. So a little very, very niche, but something that's meaningful to me.
All right, fantastic. Well, we still got a couple minutes left, but I think everybody's had a chance to brag that we're going to get to brag today. I'll finish up. All my family, for the most part, is healthy and staying away from all the various challenges out there. They've had to quarantine a lot. Those of you that have kids that go to daycare, you know, in this case, it's my grandkids, but it's starting to get into even into the preschool age and younger, where some of them are coming down with COVID too. None of my family has, but let's stay diligent out there and wearing our masks and doing our best to get this stuff behind us. I don't want this to be a yearly occurrence, which is starting to evolve towards that, where we may have to get yearly booster shots. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over back to Zane, I guess, who's run the meeting today.
We do have Julie Ulmer who just joined. You might want to ask her if she has something to brag.
Yeah, Julie, would you like to brag?
Sure, I'll brag. I was excited that the council decided to put some money on the budget, set aside some money to line a few of our middle school courts for pickleball. And
You're on mute.
sorry, can you hear me? Did you hear anything I said?
Some of it.
I heard pickleball.
Okay, so I found out that they had actually gone ahead and done 3 of the middle schools. Bryce, Robinson, and Otto all have pickleball lines now. So you can go learn to play pickleball if you don't already know how to play. It's a great sport for all ages.
Fantastic. Back to you, Zane.
Awesome. So now I'm going to turn it over to Benton Hall to do our prayer. So let me just share my slides real quick. All right, Benton, all yours.
Father, we thank you for today and lift up Kent, that all the treatments would really work and work well. And we thank you for our food in Christ's name. Amen.
Awesome. And then we have Glenn doing our prayer, or sorry, pledge.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We've got some noise behind us. I'm going to mute here for a few minutes.
All right. And then Roxanne, I'm going to turn it over to you to do our member moment. So feel free to share your slides.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. First of all, just an announcement. We have a new applicant for membership, and that is John Stafford's wife, Julia. She will be inducted next week. And so let's welcome her. We all got an email about her information, and so we look forward for that. And also, we have some birthdays. Glenn's birthday is tomorrow. Can you see the screen?
No.
No, you have to share it.
Oh, can you see it now? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, Glenn, happy birthday. And Carlson, his birthday is also coming up. Patrick Pope, he also has a January birthday. And Nathan Tay, happy birthday. We're happy to see you here. And we wish you all a beautiful month and a lot of hugs and love and health to all of you all year long. Thank you. Back to you, Zane.
Awesome. So now just talking about club business. As Fred mentioned earlier, we have the roundtable this Saturday. So Plano West Rotary is hosting that. So we want to have a big turnout as we do at all of our district events. So yeah, make sure to show up and kind of have that Plano West Rotary Club Pride. If you want to do like the pledge, prayer, or any of those like brief speaking roles, just let me know, because we do have some opportunities for you to say again like the pledge. So yeah, make sure to show up for that. It's going to be really fun. This for those that don't know, Roundtable is where all of like the district leadership in 5810, so in North Texas, kind of gets together. So club presidents and club leaders, as well as our district leaders, they all come together and kind of have announcements on the state of the district, sometimes trainings and all that stuff. And there's always a host club. So this month we're the host club. So again, just show up and it should be a fun thing. Also, we have our board of directors meeting on January 17th. So that's next Monday at 6 p.m. The link is the same as all of our meetings. So you can just find the link on our website. And so, yeah, it's always open to all of our members. So if you have, some consideration or anything you'd like to say to the board, we're all ears. So show up there too, if you'd like. And then we also have, as usual, a bunch of service projects that are going on. So we have delivering furniture to needy families. I think John had talked about that in his brag. So that's an awesome thing. You can see the link on the screen. We're also doing 3 different meal drive-throughs. One is today, one is next week, and I guess another the week after that. So make sure to sign up at bit.ly/Rotary Meals. And then we also have a cleanup Plano on Avenue K. This is something we do, I think every other month. So Glenn is in charge of that, and you can sign up on the link on the screen. So yeah, just show up to service projects, show up to Roundtable, and yeah, that's all I have. So next up will be, I'll be letting Tamara introduce our speaker.
All right, our speaker today is MacKenzie Bills. MacKenzie Bills has worked in the TIP or TIP office for 3 years as the TIP report manager and analyst, and has worked at the State Department for 5 years total. She has covered East and Central Africa, Central Asia, and parts of Europe. In her spare time, she enjoys reading, puzzles, and playing with her cats. Welcome, MacKenzie.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be able to speak with you all and for your interest in the issue. It's a pressing issue that increasingly is being unraveled and we're seeing in all of our communities across the country. So I commend you all for taking the time and the interest. Let me try to share my screen real quick. There we go. Can you all see my screen? And it just, okay, and it just is the presentation, the efforts to combat trafficking in persons.
We see like a little black box around it, but so you might need to go full screen.
Okay. What now?
Yep,
Okay.
that's good.
Good.
Okay, so I work for the State Department in the Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons. This, there we go. My office, we host and monitor, well, we do a number of things, which I will get into the bread and butter as we move through the presentation. But in full, we were created when the State Department, or actually the Congress and the government, officially criminalized human trafficking in the US in 2000. We were the first country in the whole world to criminalize human trafficking. So we were a leader in terms of recognizing it, and shortly after the United Nations followed suit. When the office, or when Congress criminalized human trafficking, they also created our office at the State Department to put out the annual Trafficking Persons Report and to create awareness on the issue. So we just celebrated our 20 years 2 years ago. So now this year will be 22 years. So easy to remember. But I want to start off our meeting today to talk about the definition, because increasingly trafficking, it gets confusing. We're thinking about smuggling, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to focus in on the definition itself. So trafficking in persons, it is a crime. Traffickers use force, fraud, or coercion to compel adults and children to work or engage in commercial sex. Children used in commercial sex are trafficking victims, regardless of whether there is force, fraud, or coercion. Under that umbrella definition, there are various, under the general definition, there are various forms of human trafficking. The most prominent that we often think of is sex trafficking and child sex trafficking. So this is forcing someone to have sex to make money off of them, or forcing them with you. A lot of times you might think of this in other countries. There's when you have forced marriage and a child is forced to have sex with the husband, like those sorts of things happen. And then the other large part of human trafficking is forced labor. And this is the one that's increasingly growing, that's often not talked about. So there's forced child labor. So forcing a child to work in the worst form. So in factories, out in the fields, at young ages. There's also debt bondage. Debt bondage is that idea we think from when we abolished slavery in the United States, actually owning a person. This still happens today worldwide, in India and in different Central Asian countries. It's when to pay off a debt, a parent might sell their child and sell their life to go and work. So it's actually still happens. And then there's domestic servitude. This is, bringing in someone to work and live in the home and, basically be their domestic servant. And then the last piece that we don't necessarily in the US talk about as much, but does happen, is the unlawful recruitment or use of child soldiers. So sending children into battle, or even you could be using them as a messenger or using them to transport goods. Anything to use them under the age of 18 is not good. It is trafficking. So there are a lot of myths. Unfortunately, we, over the years, because it's just a relatively new issue, people conflate it with different things. So the first myth is individuals have to cross international boundaries to be considered a trafficking victim. This is not true. Individuals can be trafficked in their hometown. They can be trafficked in their home. All you need is that force, fraud, and coercion, and to have that power dynamic of forcing someone to do something for the benefit of making money or against their will. Trafficking victims have to be bound and physically restrained, that they cannot walk around in public. This is not true. You might often see pictures of girls and children in cages. That is very rarely happening. Trafficking victims actually are probably walking around us. A lot of victims actually don't know that they're being trafficked because of the way that the manipulation or coercion is being worked out. They think that they have free will when they really don't. Human trafficking and human smuggling are the same thing. This is important because we often think that you have to move a person across international border or even across the state for it to be human trafficking, but that's not at all. You can actually, human smuggling, which might be someone in Mexico wanting to come to the US or something illegally, that can be smuggling, but that doesn't mean that it's trafficking, right? You have to have that force, fraud, and coercion component there. Only women and children can be victims of human trafficking. This is also not true. Although women and children do make up the bulk of the number of victims, men and boys and trans people, those that are not gendered, can also be victims of trafficking as well. Actually, For forced labor, adult men are the largest component of forced labor in terms of the out of the proportions. Individuals who are related to or in a relationship with a traffic cannot be considered victims of trafficking. This is not true. You can be trafficked and also be dating your trafficker, or be in a relationship. And actually, we increasingly see this because that's when you start to see those power dynamics and the manipulation, the coercion. If you've ever heard of Stockholm Syndrome, those sorts of things kind of come into play. Okay, so Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000. I mentioned this earlier, but this was the official sort of criminalization and putting human trafficking as an issue, a criminal offense, on the books in the US. Under the Clinton administration, Congress passed and officially signed it. What the TVPA did, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, it defined human trafficking. It said this is legally, this is the issue, and this is legally wrong. We also then set severe penalties. We said you will get jail time if you're convicted, and you will have 15 to 20 years, which makes it actually a punished crime, which is great. We also provided access to benefits and services for victims. So if you're identified as a victim, you can go to long-term or short-term or long-term care. We also started to say, okay, well, if you are a foreigner from abroad here in the US and you're identified as a victim, we will not punish you for the crimes that your trafficker forced you to commit, etc. So we give them visas, asylum visas. It also formed the President's Interagency Task Force to monitor and combat trafficking in persons. This is an interagency task force between different federal bureaus. So your Department of Justice, your Department of Defense, your Department of State, your Department of Health and Human Services. All of these federal organizations serve on the task force, and our office actually leads it. It also created the State Department's TIP office, Trafficking in Persons Office, which is what my office is, what we do. And this was a bipartisan law, and it's been authorized 5 times, meaning they've updated it, elaborated on it, done different things. The United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime Protocol to Prevent, Suppress, and Punish Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children, also called the Palermo Protocol. This shortly after the US criminalized human trafficking, the United Nations did, and this is what they created. It is an international agreement. 178 parties or countries have acceded to the protocol. We're just missing, I think, about 12 or 14, so we're almost there. It provides a comprehensive international approach to the areas of prosecution, protection, and prevention. And the UN also defines trafficking in persons writ large. Okay, so when we talk about human trafficking, we call it the 3 Ps, and this is our approach to how we wholesomely can combat it. So let's start with the first one, prosecution. So the first one, prosecution, really means to punish traffickers. So how do we do that? Each country should have a law that officially prohibits all forms of trafficking. Sometimes in countries we were working with others, is sometimes they might only prohibit sex trafficking, not labor trafficking. Or maybe you'll have an insufficient law where you've criminalized it, but you haven't you can allow fines in lieu of imprisonment, which is not good when you have traffickers that just are making a bunch of money. They'll just pay the fine, right? So you're not really punishing them. So that's the first thing, is having adequate laws. Then you must investigate, prosecute, and convict those traffickers. This requires law enforcement training, so that way law enforcement are aware and they can identify it and they can properly investigate the crime as a trafficking crime rather than something else like rape or smuggling or different things. So that's the first thing. The second P is protection. So now you're punishing the traffickers. Now we want to protect our victims. So this means you're proactively identifying victims. And when you're identifying them, you're referring them to care. Unfortunately, the way our system is set up, it requires victims to sort of be the first to identify themselves. If they're living in fear and they're nervous, they think they'll be deported, et cetera, they're least likely to actually identify themselves and seek help on their own. So we need to create spaces and opportunities for them to know that they can report them, they can self-report, self-identify, and that there will not be any repercussions for them. A lot of times the way that our legal systems work, inadvertently, they will be traumatized. So say we need them to be a witness in court, but you're placing them next to their trafficker. That's very difficult for them. So they're not going to want to be a witness in court. So we need to make sure we're providing services for them that can protect their identity, protect them, and get them the help that they need. So we encourage government and NGO cooperation to do so. Victims are more likely to feel safe in an NGO than in a government facility. So we actually believe in supporting nonprofits and NGOs. The last P is prevention. This is public awareness raising and education to the whole public. So what we're doing right now, it's more likely that someone like you all will see and identify a trafficking victim or a trafficking situation than a victim or the police department. You are the ones that you have the eyes and ears, you know people, you're more likely to recognize when something's going on, right? So that's why these things are so important, and for you all to continue the awareness raising and educate your friends and your family and your local legislators and groups and whatnot, wherever you live. And then lastly, in prevention, you need a whole government approach to do this. People need to work together. We have a national action plan that actually was passed last year for the US government, which is using all states and the federal government to increase efforts across all parties to strengthen our laws and to strengthen our protection frameworks to help victims. So what does our office do? We have many different things. We have the reporting office team. That's the team that I work on. I manage the annual trafficking in persons report. So all the pieces to get all that information together that we release, that's my team. We then use the report that comes out in June every year, excuse me, as a diplomatic tool. We use it to go engage with other governments and international organizations to educate them about the trends and issues that are happening in their country. We also, Congress have put money behind our work. So we are funding and monitoring anti-trafficking programs in the US and around the world. We do outreach. We engage in public diplomacy and raising awareness, which is what we're doing here today. But we don't just do it here by these presentations. We do it online, social media. We do it through large outreach or presentations, etc. You know, we work with anyone that will work with us to increase awareness. We do interagency coordination, so we support the White House and the administration to coordinate efforts across all of our federal bureaus. And then we do survivor engagement. We ensure that federal efforts are victim-centered and trauma-informed through supporting the U.S. Advisory Council and the Human Trafficking Expert Consultant Group. It's imperative that you have victims and survivors who have been through it and understand the issue most in providing input and engagement in terms of the direction and the future of legislation and policy and decision making. Okay, so the Trafficking in Persons report. As I talked about, I am the manager of this report that you see here on the screen. So this is our primary diplomatic and policy tool. It's released every year. Congress requires it to be released on July 1. We evaluate efforts of 188 governments to combat human trafficking. We do not evaluate NGO or international organizations' efforts, strictly just all governments in the world. We assess countries based on their government's efforts to meet minimum standards set forth in our trafficking law, which means those 3 P's that I talked about: prosecution, protection, prevention. Our programming, we have foreign assistance. Our foreign assistance covers bilateral and global programs. So working with one other country or multiple countries that we can work on a particular issue to help solve in that country. So maybe it's increasing data, or maybe it's protecting, maybe there's a significant migration issue in the country. So we can give money to a country to help do that. We provide emergency victim assistance funds. So maybe in a country that a government or an international organization, really, they could have some money on hand when a victim is identified and they need help for a certain thing, they can get that. We have short-term training and technical assistance, which would mean we are training, maybe it's government employees, or we're training advocacy leaders, or we're training law enforcement, etc., what have you, on the issue, so that way they can be better knowledgeable and prepared to identify and assist when they come across the issue. We have the Child Protection Compact Partnership. So this is particularly identifying child labor or child sex trafficking. And I really honing in on that issue in particular if it's a problem in another country. So in sub-Saharan Africa, where the bulk of the population are young people, we see a lot more child labor there, and forced child labor in particular. So that's where I actually was helping work with, our last one was in Benin. So we were able to help get some money there to particularly identify that issue and get help for children in that country. And then we have the program to end modern slavery. And this is just a writ large amount of money that we can identify places around the whole world to combat human trafficking. It's not going. There we go. Okay. Human trafficking in supply chains. Oh, okay, we'll go here. We also work closely with the U.S. Advisory Council on Human Trafficking. This group is a formal platform for survivors of human trafficking to advise and make recommendations to the cabinet level task force on federal anti-trafficking policies and programs. The U.S. government believes strongly in the importance of a survivor and trauma-informed approach. So anytime there is potential legislation, we want survivors and victims to look at it first and provide feedback to us. So we don't create a law that then re-exploits them or re-traumatizes them or re-victimizes them. So it's imperative to have their voice in the game. Human trafficking and supply chains. I'm sure you've all heard about supply chains lately. A lot of the things that we are purchasing or we're part of inadvertently due to supply chains are usually produced by slave labor. So one particular issue that you might have heard a lot about recently is Uyghurs being forced to work in concentration camps in China right now. A lot of our garments or our clothing we actually get from China, and that's actually being made from this area. So how do you stop that? Those are the kind of the questions that are at hand. It's not just in our clothing. A lot of coffee is produced by slave labor, which is unfortunate because I'm a coffee addict. Also the fishing industry, a significant amount of fish caught comes from Taiwan, as well as Japan, as well as general Southeast Asia. And that is it. Here in the US, we have issues with the meat packing plants or in our agriculture. So some of those you might also find it in restaurants and bars. So human trafficking is everywhere, labor exploitation is everywhere, and a lot of the things that we're purchasing and taking in, unfortunately, have been created because of it. you can better assess, which industries and where, and maybe what things you have, you're using every day that have come from human trafficking by using the responsible sourcing tool. This was created to help U.S. federal contractors and other companies better identify, prevent, and address the risks of human trafficking in their supply chains. So I would recommend you go to this address down here, this HTML, www.responsiblesourcingtool.org, to go and see, what things that you bought from which country might have been created because of human trafficking. So you might be asking yourself, wow, this is such a big issue. It's around me. What do I do? Well, the first thing is, I just want to commend you all today for taking the time to listen to me, because I think this is the first step. It's just first educating yourself, so that way you can recognize it. So I would say continue to learn. Keep reading articles, keep reading books, go to various websites and learn more. Then raise awareness in your communities through local events, donations to anti-trafficking organizations, and outreach to your local, state, and federal government representatives. Unfortunately, it's a relatively new topic, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It's happening. And a lot that we don't know is because we just haven't put the money towards investigating it. So although there's 11, how many billion people or millions of people that we think are being trafficked every year, we think that there's way more, just because that's only those that have been identified, whether that's been self-identification or through the police. We think that there's way more going on under the table that we're just not aware about. You can visit our website, www.state.gov/J/tip, to read about the 20 ways you can help fight human trafficking. And you can read more about federal anti-trafficking efforts also at our website, https://www.state.gov/human-trafficking. If you own a business, ensure that your workers are acting of their own will and that your supply chains are clean. So again, go to that responsible sourcing tool. And if you expect someone is a victim of human trafficking, you can report your suspicions to law enforcement by calling 911 or the 24-hour NGO run hotline, 1-888-373-7888. And I'll just close by sharing that I found out that a friend's girlfriend actually was being trafficked because they were just talking to me about the issue. She was a nanny, came over from Brazil, and those that were employing her took her passport because they said they needed to do her taxes for her. And then later on, when she tried to leave, they held her passport above her head and said that they would deport her. So she had stayed in that job for 3 or 4 years because she was scared that the administration was going to deport her. Even when I encouraged her, told her that this is not okay to report it, she was so scared to do so that she thought that I was also in on the manipulation, that I was also going to personally deport her after I found this out. So all this to say, it's around us, and you don't need to be in chains to do so. And you probably have come across someone that's been a victim at some point in your life without knowing it. And if I hadn't understood or known about the issue, I wouldn't have known to try to help in the ways that I could. So I encourage you to continue to do the work and do what you're doing now, and to continue to be educated. With that said, I'll close and accept any questions that you might have.
Hi, thank you so much for this program. It's very, very informative. So I actually have 2 things. One is when we've taken road trips down south and we go into the rest areas, I've noticed in the girls' bathroom stalls, there are signs in English and Spanish that say, "Are you a victim of trafficking?" And they have some information in there. And so my first question is, is that working? Is that a good program? And then my second question is, how would we just, you said they're around, it's happening around us. Do you have any other examples besides the nanny that we could keep an eye out? I think I vaguely remember a flight attendant on a airplane a few years ago suspected a girl was being trafficked, and I forget how it turned out. They got her to the bathroom or something and asked her, and then they got her out of that situation. So any ways to help us, know how we could identify it and what's working?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So I'll start by saying there's a number of groups that are vulnerable. So migrant workers, those that are undocumented, those at very high percentage tend to be exploited in labor. Even if they're migrants and they actually have documents, because a lot of the processes are intricate and the bureaucracy can become complex, traffickers can use that to input fear to deportation or various things, so they can be likely to do that. People of minorities or of various ethnic groups, about 1 in 3 women that are indigenous are trafficked or at least come across it at least in their lives. So that's something to look out for. We try to do particular outreach to reservations and whatnot. Those that are youth that are homeless because they can't, maybe they don't have family or they got stuck in a bad situation. That's bad. Though women in commercial sex, in terms of like sex workers, they're prone to being trafficked. So that's another area. I would say that the biggest thing to look out for is just, it's that force, fraud, and coercion, that manipulation, that coercion piece. Anyone can be trafficked. Like we all could be trafficked if someone were to find the right thing in our lives that would say like, no, don't do this. You can't do that. You need to do that. So just on like a grander psychological scale, if you don't have the needs that you need to be met every day, money or shelter or food, you're more prone to fall into, trap someone to come get you. We've seen that. We saw it during COVID. And there were a ton more people that ended up getting trafficked because the economy went down. So then people were not employed. And so those already vulnerable or trying to make ends meet ended up falling into various traps. So all that to say, it's hard because every situation is unique. But those are those groups that I would look for. You can also sort of, as you talk to someone, sometimes you hear like that manipulation. So in my nanny story, it was like, because I was hearing that she had this fear of being reported to be deported. And then as I asked more questions, I found out basically they took her documents, which are her one thing that can allow her to have any power here or negotiating power. And so she hadn't left her job because she really couldn't. She didn't have any freedom to do so. And that's in essence what the issue is your ability to make decisions for yourself is gone. So the other issue, I'm originally from the Midwest, and we have a lot of issues in agriculture and in construction. There was actually, we found out a sting in Des Moines, Iowa for construction. They found 15 men were all in one room that the construction company was forcing them to stay and then wasn't paying any of them. So it can happen anywhere and in any industry. So I hope that helps.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Anyone? I think Nadia's raising her hand. Go ahead.
Similar question what lady asked, but I've got 2 young teenage girls, and they're at the point they're just going out. One of them is driving, another one, I meet a friend here and there. So is there anything I can provide them to educate myself? What shall they and myself look out for?
Yeah, so I will say I don't think you should be, nervous. It's not like anyone's going to come and it's not they're going to come snatch them. Like that's very rare, the occurrence. I think what's the bigger something that would be more nervous about are I've seen younger women getting on group chats with people wanting to talk to them, to go meet up at a certain place, to go do something like that. And then that's how they get propelled into certain situations that could become trafficking. So I would say more just monitoring and making sure that they, are being safe in terms of the group chats or the places that they're going online, and not meeting up with anyone that they don't know, that's not in a public place. Those sorts of things.
Thank you.
All right. We actually do have time for one more if anyone wants to ask anything.
MacKenzie? Okay, as an ISD, a school person here, what's the youngest age you've seen trafficking in the US?
Trafficking can go to just born. There have been a number of criminal or cases, but we found that Americans were trafficking, faking adoption cases from Uganda that were actually purchasing them and trafficking them to the US. And those that thought they were adopting children that actually thought they were adopting them, they were not. The parents in Uganda thought that they were just sending their children to a boarding school in the US, and it was not the case. And so those American companies they're actually being criminally prosecuted by at the federal level. But so some of those industries, so technically once they were born, they were shipped here. So we've seen that as young as just 1 or 2 days old, unfortunately. So there's foreign trafficking and there's internal trafficking. I've said this to a number of people because although our report, it focuses on all the countries, even not including our own, but we tend to talk to a lot of other governments, but I think our own government should be doing more. And I have been pressing it locally at the state and city level. So I think that's something that we could be all doing. And so I encourage you all to talk to your city councils or your state legislatures to increase awareness raising at schools, to increase it at hotels, to increase it in business and labor organizations. Because so a different example, there was a case this last year that a community college was trafficking students from other countries. And once they got here, they were forcing them to work in the cafeteria. And so can be those sorts of things as well. Anyway, so it's all becomes very seedy and can happen around us anywhere. So we all have to be better in terms of learning about it and educating other people. So I'm sure that each of you know 2 or 3 friends that could benefit from hearing some of the things that you've heard today as well. So.
Well, thank you, MacKenzie, for speaking to us. It's obviously a very important issue. So in appreciation for your time and program, Plano West Rotary will donate $10 in your name to our Polio Plus Fund. So together with matching funds from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, your $10 will turn into $30 and provide a polio vaccine for about 50 children. So thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's really great. Thank you.
And next week, our speaker is our own president, Alex Johnson. He'll be talking about how to grow a business. So join our meeting for that. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to our club founder, Tom Posey, to do the 4-way test. Tom.
As we end our meeting, we will say the 4-way test. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair or concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Rotary.
thank you all for showing up, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, MacKenzie.